Trophy Hunters TV Classics is presented by Nikon, the trusted name in optics. Bad Boy Buggies, they'll never hear you coming. Barnett Crossbows, built for the hunt. Bowtech, refuse to follow. Cuddy-Back Digital, fast trigger speed, long battery life. Mossy Oak brand camo. The NRA Freedom Action Foundation. Barnes Bullets, unleaded, unfailing, unbeatable. Rhino Ground Blinds, experience the revolution. And by She Outdoor Apparel, clothing for her expedition.
In February of 2002, something called chronic wasting disease was found in wildlife in Wisconsin, and what followed has been a nightmare of media and government panic. I'm Jerry Johnston. Stay with us for this edition of Trophy Hunters TV Classics.
Canis latrans, or coyote, is a species of canid found throughout North and Central America. With keen senses, they're excellent hunters, and presently the most abundant livestock predators in North America. As cruel as it seems, it is the circle of life.
Circles are good.
Introducing the new Nikon Coyote Special Rifle Scope with a BDC Predator hunting reticle. Designed for fast target acquisition and easy tracking on moving coyotes. It's the ultimate predator hunting system.
Here's what Cuddy-Back customers are saying. Don't compromise, get a Cuddy-Back.
What's up? We got stands. We need them all. You got them?
Funny how the guys who show up first to help hang the stands
All right, everybody follow me. Put your blindfolds on.
are the guys you most enjoy sharing them with. Mossy Oak. It's not a passion, it's an obsession.
Bad Boy Buggy XT, re-engineered from the ground up. The suspension,
independent McPherson strut.
the braking system,
Four-wheel hydraulic disc.
the motor,
25% more horsepower and torque.
the electrical system,
Sealed and protected.
chassis,
Redesigned for best-in-class handling and performance.
quiet, eco-friendly, built to haul and engineered to hunt.
The ultimate all-electric off-road four-wheel drive vehicle.
The new Bad Boy XT. They'll never hear you coming.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. A lot of us, and I think all of you or most of you that are here, you pretty much don't take the Department of Natural Resources' word as God. In fact, I don't know who your God is. I have one God, and it's not the DNR. So
They gather by the hundreds in the backwoods of Wisconsin. Landowners, taxpayers, hunters, and business owners angry and fed up with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
I'm standing in front of all of you telling you truths. We want to report things that are true because we don't feel the Department of Natural Resources telling you the truth.
And they lied. And I'm thinking, well, if they're going to lie about this, what else are they lying about?
This is our land, and they don't have the right to come there and say they're going to do this to us.
The carcass tag number is 49482. 49482. Yep.
It's been more than a year now since something called chronic wasting disease was found in southern Wisconsin. Although it appeared in very small numbers, the Department of Natural Resources issued an order to eradicate the entire population of deer in a 400 square mile area.
38256.
Even though we know CWD has been identified and monitored in other places of the country since the early 1970s and never affected a single human being, the media fed into the hands of Wisconsin's DNR, fanning the flames of a panic that has seriously damaged the hunting industry, putting some people out of business.
So be careful. Okay, we'll see.
1 year ago, Texas trophy hunters went to Wisconsin. We saw the carcasses of healthy deer shot and killed in the eradication program.
The rights of the landowners who live in the eradication zone are being violated. We are forced to live in fear as bullets can fly 24 hours a day. Sharpshooters patrol our roads and skies like Gestapos in the night.
And 1 year later, citizens still desperate for answers have turned angry and defiant.
I think they're trying to stuff something down our throats.
I wish one of them DNR employees would come in my store and tell me that.
Our hunting heritage has been destroyed.
These are not in the semi. What are these deer here?
Texas Trophy Hunters editor Horace Gore has tough questions for a DNR employee at a remote check station, where deer carcasses are allowed to lie outside unprotected, with a dog running around loose. It's a far cry from last year's eradication hunts, where the media was invited out, and DNR employees wore gloves and gowns, and the area was roped off. It raises serious questions. If CWD is such a deadly, devastating disease, why are no precautions being used at this check station where reporters and cameras were not expected?
The whole state's under quarantine. Everybody says, well, you're under quarantine. I said, you don't understand. The whole damn state and every state around us is under quarantine.
As we return to Wisconsin, you'll meet a deer breeder put out of business after being told by the DNR that he had a CWD positive deer in his breeding facility. Suspicious of the state's findings, Stan Hall saved a tissue sample from the same deer and sent it to another lab, and it came back negative. Now the DNR has shut down his business.
Let's fight this till hell freezes over, then we'd fight on the ice. We're not going to quit. We're here for the long run.
You know, you just don't go in and start wiping out a whole population and expect it to eliminate the disease.
We'll meet the man some call the father of CWD. Dr. Gene Schoenfeld is the scientist who first discovered the disease in Colorado back in the 70s. And Dr. Schoenfeld never imagined CWD would cause such a panic.
I think the media has served to blow chronic wasting disease way out of proportion. And of course, some of our professionals that are working in it have helped blow it out of proportion as well when they recommend, wide-scale slaughter of animals.
I go home every day, I wash my hands, and I'm not afraid of it.
We'll also meet a man who's had his hands in CWD for decades.
But I've been with it for 30 years, and I'm not afraid to handle an animal with it, and I've hunted in CWD areas.
Sometimes the tail end of winter can be brutal in Wisconsin. A cold wind scatters the last snowfall over Dane County, near the town of Mount Horeb. It represents the center of the chronic wasting disease eradication zone. For reasons that are still not clear to citizens and scientists alike, the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources has decided to kill every single whitetail deer in a 400 square mile area. It's a bizarre move to try and eliminate CWD, even though the DNR has failed to prove that the disease has ever killed even one single deer.
And the immorality of killing our state animal for the dumpster is expected.
The group gathered here tonight call themselves the Voices of Wisconsin. Each person, it seems, has a story to tell, but mainly they have questions, like why, in the face of such scientific evidence against the eradication program, is the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources spending millions of dollars to eliminate a disease that affects less than 2% of the deer population? When contacted, officials at the Department of Natural Resources refused our repeated requests for comment. A year ago, spokesman Bob Manuel easily granted our request for an interview. Not so 1 year later. Tom Hauge, the director of DNR Bureau of Wildlife Management, wouldn't comment either. In fact, in our last request for an interview, Hauge's only response was, and I quote, "I don't have time for an interview. I have 7 puppies in my basement."
CWD has hurt this business by probably easily 50% of our business.
Stay with us, as one hunting equipment dealer located in the heart of the eradication zone says his business is now in jeopardy, as the Journal of the Texas Trophy Hunters continues.
Trophy Hunters TV presents Nikon's Inside Edge.
I've been in this business a long time, and at this stage of my career, I could use any optic out there that I wanted to, but I choose to use Nikon. Now, why would I use Nikon? I love the quality of the product. I know that it uses the finest glass there is out there, whether it's for the rifle scope or binocular or the spotting scope or their field scope. Technology. Their technology is unbelievable. They've got the finest coatings there are on the lenses. They've got the finest glass. The visual acuity through those binoculars over that scope is unbelievable. They're rugged, they're tough. And I like to hunt. Hunting these days is expensive. You know, I could go out and spend a fortune on other type of glass out there and still not get the quality that I get when I buy a Nikon product. So I'd rather take a little of that money that's left over from what I might have spent to go on that next hunting trip.
For more on Nikon Sport Optics, go to nikonhunting.com.
If you're worried about the direction our country's going, you're in good company. Too many people have forgotten our nation was founded to protect freedom, like our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Freedom is not about what government can do for us, but about keeping government from doing things to us. There's only one way to protect our freedoms, by voting for the candidates who support them. I hope you won't be missing in action on Election Day. Register to vote.
For more information, visit triggerthevote.org, paid for by the NRA Freedom Action Foundation.
To find out what makes Barnes Triple Shock X bullets the most effective hunting bullets available, buy a box or request a free DVD at barnesbullets.com. Barnes Bullets. Unleaded, unfailing, unbeatable.
This CWD craze kind of erupted a couple of years ago. What has CWD done to your business one way or the other?
CWD has hurt this business by probably easily 50% of our business. When it got going, it shut our business right down easily by half.
Before Wisconsin began its eradication hunts, Jeremy Papa's archery shop near Mount Horeb was one of the favorite hangouts for deer hunters. On this Saturday morning, though, the shop was empty.
We're not going to give up. I hear a lot of retailers that are at that point where they're just fed up with it, so they're not open during the regular business hours. They just kind of give up. You can't give up.
To me, this is one of the worst things that CWD has done up here, is the media saying, don't eat the deer meat.
They're talking about spread, you know, the killer spreads. And
what does this say right here?
Wisconsin doesn't stop CWD. If it'll move across the country, this will be a national story.
Oh, kill every deer in the United States.
You bet. Yep, it'll just
spread. Where are the deer that were found dead that died from CWD?
Back in Texas, Dr. James Kroll is an outspoken opponent to the Wisconsin eradication plan.
You remember there were dire predictions that all the deer in Wisconsin were going to die. They were going to get it. What has been created is the impression among the public through this media frenzy that went on is that they've got a risk out there. So whether there's a risk or not, unfortunately, now we got to spend a lot of time and money developing a test to make people feel more comfortable with eating their venison.
Get a couple of the smaller pieces because the fire is down. We got up and milked the cows and then we went hunting.
It's early morning out on Fern Frames Dairy Farm in Wisconsin. Her daily ritual out here always includes taking venison out of the freezer to thaw for supper.
This is hamburger and this is steaks.
And you took that deer locally right here pretty close to the house?
Yeah, right. It was right above the house.
And you're not afraid to eat this venison, are you?
No. I'm not a bit afraid of it.
In spite of warnings coming from the media and the DNR, Fern and her family and many residents of this area have refused to remove venison from their diets.
David, a lot of people don't think you ought to be eating this meat.
They've been eating it for years, and this has been around here for years, and I don't think there's any danger. All biologists that I've talked to that from other states said they'd eat it.
The does are always more tender than the bucks.
Horace joins the Frame family for their regular venison dinner. Sad thing is, though, a lot of the mainstream media and even some outdoor writers would lead you to believe this family is taking great risk by taking a single bite.
Not in my wildest dreams did I ever think it'd get this much attention.
Although you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who's ever seen a deer affected by CWD, we know a man in Colorado who has.
Yes, I put the first post in myself. And these are the pens down here. They've been expanded considerably since 1968.
Colorado State University's Gene Schoenfeld was the first scientist to notice the disease 30 years ago. It was in these pens where CWD is still being studied today.
There's probably the highest contaminant with chronic wasting disease anywhere in the nation is these 10 acres that are here with Colorado Division of Wildlife and CSU.
For the first time, he reveals photographs never published before of the first case of CWD. Even though this mule deer died, there still isn't enough evidence to prove that CWD was the cause of death.
We were managing for chronic wasting disease. It wasn't a big deal. We managed for it.
We knew about this disease for nearly 15 years, 20 years nearly, and no one really cared.
And it didn't wipe out the deer herd.
No, it did not.
Dr. Terry Spraker, also with Colorado State University, works with CWD every day. He's tested and researched more than 30,000 deer and elk over the years. Although the disease has only been found up in Wisconsin for 2 years, it's existed in Colorado for at least 30. It's hard for many scientists to understand Wisconsin's eradication program.
Until we have the facts, I mean, I've been wrong before, but until we have the facts, we have to be very careful about believing what we think instead of what we can show.
But there's a lot of policies now based on what people think.
That's right. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Without saying it.
This is some just positive CWD material.
Just?
Just, it's like gold. It's very difficult to get. But these are all just samples. Most of them are negatives. I had a meeting the other day, and here we're talking about the risk of CWD. And I coming over here, and here's a guy riding a motorbike with no helmet going 50 miles an hour. To me, he was far risking himself for death more than I was hunting in an area where there's CWD.
But it's devastating to see what they've done.
It's devastating.
And, you know, they've learned
to slaughter God's animals is devastating.
Yes.
Coming up next, we'll meet a Colorado couple who had one case of chronic wasting disease turn up in their elk herd. We'll hear their story, then hear the nightmares of a man up in Wisconsin. What happened after the DNR found CWD in one of his animals?
I mean, we spent 14 years building this place, and you get a phone call one day, and a bunch of DNR wardens come out here and treat you like you're a criminal.
Stay with us.
For over 30 years, TTHA has united the outdoor community to promote and protect the heritage of hunting through education, wildlife management, youth programs, and community outreach. Become a member of the family and receive the Journal of the Texas Trophy Hunters magazine, free membership gifts, a free classified ad in the Journal, discounts on Trophy Hunters merchandise, and more. Use the code TVBUCK and save $5. Join online at TTHA.com or call 877-261-2541.
There are reasons why year upon year, thousands of trophy animals are taken by a Barnett crossbow. There are reasons why Barnett has sold over 1 million crossbows to date. From day one, over a half century ago, every Barnett crossbow has been built to be better and better. Innovation on top of innovation, pioneering patents year after year. Built to be better, built to be faster. Built for maximum speed and efficiency for over half a century. Barnett crossbows, built for the hunt.
We're going to learn something.
We're going to learn something, and we're going to hopefully help the wild ones and the people around us. My dad's 74 years old, and he's been eating deer meat his whole life in this area.
What about landowners whose animals have tested positive for chronic wasting disease? Well, there's a world of difference between two states. In Colorado, the disease turned up in Stephanie and Dennis White's elk breeding operation. One case. There, the Colorado Division of Wildlife is working with the couple to monitor and study the herd. But in Wisconsin, when the Department of Natural Resources found one case of CWD in Stan Hall's deer herd, a much different scenario unfolded.
7 game wardens showed up, and you know, first of all, this is supposed to be an animal health issue. You don't show up with 7 wardens with packing guns to deal with a sick animal, supposedly, you know.
Stan Hall says his real trouble began when the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, in charge of testing the state's deer for CWD, found out that Hall had sent his own sample of the infected deer to another lab, and his sample came back negative, disputing the state's test results.
When they found out I had a second sample, you could tell, I knew the minute they knew. When they came back that Friday night, it was a whole different world.
And we often do that in science. And I'm a real critic of some of this stuff because science has not been followed and a lot of things going on with CWD. But we use blind comparison tests a lot of times. And when you send off 2 samples from the same animal and you come back with 2 different results, something's not right. Either the test is not right or somebody's got an agenda, or that really concerns me.
I can't even butcher.
While the state of Wisconsin has quarantined his breeding operation, Stan Hall has been forced to drive a truck to make a living, after watching his 14-year business closed by the DNR.
It's sad what's happened to this guy. You know, he is literally the poster child of the government coming in and throwing their weight around.
Most of you are familiar with and recognize our next speaker, Dr. James Kroll. He's been an active researcher, proponent, and involved in the deer industry from the deer farming side, the public hunting side, from virtually every aspect that you might imagine.
At the annual meeting of Whitetails of Wisconsin, Dr. Kroll is the featured speaker.
I'm not going to pull any punches, plus or minus, because I'm a little bit upset about some of the things my colleagues are doing and some of the things that are going on. And I'm gonna speak very frankly today. When I stepped in front of that crowd up there in Wisconsin, looked out, and it was a big audience, looking in their faces, what I saw was defeat. The biggest problem that it poses is what happened to you and the panic that ensued after people knee-jerked and reacted too fast. In epidemiology, one of the first things you do when a disease shows up is you monitor and surveil to find out the extent of it. You don't jump into the middle of an eradication program. Here's an article in the paper about 14 new deer, and your state DNR guy says not to eat the meat. That's not good.
Of all the images and reports, the most striking are the images of deer lying out unprotected at a CWD check station in Black Earth, Wisconsin. When Horace Gore arrived unannounced, he found piles of deer carcasses that have been there for hours and a black lab running loose.
With all the precautions that they took at the first check station we saw in Wisconsin a year earlier, it was a vast difference compared to what we had seen before, with all the hygiene and everything.
That's not surprising. You know, the other thing was a media event. And when you want to impress folks, you go out there with your official doctor suit on. So that's not surprising to me.
If it were an incurable, deadly, transmissible disease, they sure weren't treating it that way at the Black Earth check station.
Some people say it's an attempt to get rid of law-abiding deer breeders in high-fenced facilities. And some say creating a crisis was the only way to keep the DNR operating budget intact during a statewide financial cut. Even though chronic wasting disease has been found in other states without the high-drama knee-jerk reaction, one thing's for sure, in Wisconsin, the headlines haven't stopped, and the DNR continues to expand the eradication zone. And as of now, there's no end in sight to the crisis in Wisconsin.
You're just not going to give up on this thing that they've got going around here, are you?
No, I sure ain't. I'm going to hunt till I drop.
As long as I'm breathing, I'll fight. It's that simple.
Very definitely CWD is not to my peak of my career. If I had anything to do with it, it'd probably be the low point of my career.
I think the people of Wisconsin have been mistreated. I think a lot of folks in the long haul need to be held accountable for their actions.
You know, Davy Crockett had a famous saying just before he came to the Alamo. But he said, make sure you're right, then go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, somewhere along the line up here, they probably went ahead before they knew they were right.
Yes, they jumped the gun. They really did.
If you walk away with only one thought after this program, ask yourself this: If CWD is such a devastating disease, then why aren't the deer and elk herds in Colorado wiped out by now? After all, it was discovered almost 40 years ago, and the next time you hear and read that CWD has spread somewhere, don't believe it. CWD has probably always been there. It's just that somebody decided to test for it. In Texas, we've learned how to live with things like anthrax, a proven killer and harmful to humans. CWD is a wart on a flea's forehead compared to anthrax. We hope the wave of panic will soon subside, but we said that a year ago. Who knows what lies ahead when people make decisions in panic without scientific evidence to back it up. I'm Jerry Johnston. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Trophy Hunters TV Classics. And if you're not a member of NRA, you must think your hunting rights are bulletproof. Well, they're not. Join NRA today.